Hello, everyone. My name is frankanthony, and welcome back to Let Me Be Frank. So, this is episode 3 of season 2. With each episode now, there's kind of a general theme I like to have during each episode. Season 1, it was one topic, and we extensively talked about that topic. Now it's kind of like almost like how you would watch the news slash like maybe mixed with the View or something, where there's a couple different topics. After each commercial break, we're gonna get a new topic, but they still kind of share a general theme of a sort. And this general theme today is more so on interpersonal relationships, whether they be friendships or romantic relationships. So the first topic that we're gonna get into is small talk. So, if you're a fan of my Walk Talk with Frank series, that it goes live on my Facebook. If you're, it also goes on YouTube and Instagram. Had a brain fart for a second. I also post those on YouTube and Instagram, but Facebook is where I go live for it, and then I post the video after onto the other platforms, as well as it stays on Facebook as well. If you are a fan of that series, I talked a little bit about it, and I'm gonna try to get into try to get a little bit more in depth today on the podcast, since I have a little bit more time and I'm not in the middle of walking like 2 to 5 miles because I start to get out of breath when I'm doing that, and sometimes there's people around. That day I was talking about that there was people visiting. I like to walk around at cemeteries, because with cemeteries there's not nearly as much noise as you're walking like a sidewalk where there's cars going by in the road. There's not nearly as many cars driving around in a cemetery. So I like to kind of choose private areas like that where there's not a lot of noise, but there's also just a good area to record. You're not running into people and, all that type of stuff. So the big thing with small talk, I found for people who don't watch that Walk Talk series, one of my friends posted an article. It was from, I want to say it was a study from Harvard University, and it was on Facebook. I saw it. And the title of the article had something to do with the phrase, "How are you?" And this article was I found it very interesting, because it was a lot of things they were saying was really true. And how how just saying, "How are you?" It's so common. When you're trying to build a relationship with someone for the first time and you're trying to communicate, I just know from personal experience, there's people that I see online. I'm like, oh, I really want to talk to them, but like, what's an icebreaker? How do I communicate with them? And, it's something that many of us can relate to, where we don't know where to start with a conversation necessarily, because then, there's that risk of being too random and completely scaring someone off. And that obviously sucks. But so how are you is kind of like that general staple that we use, and we go, hi, how are you? Or hi, handsome, how are you? Or like, you can add a little bit extra. I say hi, handsome specifically because one day, reason why I also made this video too, it wasn't to target people who send me how are you messages. I just noticed, because I say, how are you myself? I'm guilty of that. I can admit that. But I was noticing just the plethora of messages that I was receiving that all just seemed the same, unfortunately, because every single message was, hi, how are you? Hi, sexy, how are you? Hi, handsome, how are you? How are you? How are you? How are you? And it's like, damn, like we really do that. And I think the science behind it, and the what Harvard University brought up, was the whole question of, do we really care about how that person is doing, or do we have a secret motive, a hidden agenda behind initiating this conversation? And to be honest, at least in my personal life, when people would reach out and say, how are you? That's kind of what it was. Like, they wanted to either say, I just wanted to let you know that I find you good looking, or there was a purpose behind it. And usually, especially when we're trying to find love and stuff, that kind of is the reason we want to find a partner. Our main mission isn't to check how every single person in the entire world is doing necessarily. There's usually sometimes something that we want to get across. If we're running a business online, sometimes there's that motive, unfortunately, of like someone's trying to sell you something or you're trying to sell something to someone. So you say, how are you? And it's like you care, but like to what extent? Like you really care about that sale, to be completely honest, you know? So that's where the whole how are you question starts to get a little disingenuous. And I found that to be really interesting because I'm like, wow, that really went out of like the value really decreased on that phrase, unfortunately, because now when you do talk to someone or when you really want to know what's going on in someone's life, like that question has, in my opinion, it's become generalized. And don't mind, I have a notebook. When I don't have a guest, it's a lot harder for me to stay on track. When I'm talking one on one with a guest or with multiple guests, it's easier to, just have that back and forth conversation. So I just have some bullets. So don't mind me if I look down for a second. If you're watching the visual, of course, you wouldn't know if I was doing the audio, but just because, yeah, I can definitely get off topic on things and I don't want to derail to this whole thing where this started about small talk and then all of a sudden I'm talking about ostriches the wrong word to pick. I'm talking about ladybugs and like the history of Mesopotamia, like I don't want to get in, just completely derail, so don't mind me there because I also don't want to forget to say things either. So yeah, with the whole how are you thing, I kind of went into how the values decreased and how it's almost kind of become like this meaningless phrase. And that's something that I did mention in the walk talk video that I did with that. A little bit more that I can get in depth with too. And this can kind of relate. I think about a romantic relationship when I think of this, because with friends, you're not necessarily checking on them every hour, but like in a relationship, some relationships, they definitely will text each other, or even not relationships, but like on the dating scene still, some people still do the whole like, how are you, or how's it been going, or how have you been, like every hour as like that update thing. And that is something personally I'm not a big fan of. And I was happy that that article addressed that and just how like, no, like I get like wanting to check in on your partner and like keeping updated and all that stuff. I don't know. To me, I guess I'm a little bit different. I like my space. I'm going to get into that a little bit later. I grew up an only child. I have half siblings, but I grew up an only child. So I grew, I just was alone a good amount. I had friends and stuff too, but I really thrived off of being alone. And it's kind of what sparked the creative process of my writing and everything. So I'm used to like needing space and not like, I don't need hourly updates. I don't need to be texting someone all day. So that could just be more of a personal thing. But I also think getting the same question over and over again, even throughout just one day, is a lot. And it's this repetitiveness that, like I just said earlier, it loses its value. It's like, okay, like you care, but then I don't know. To me, it just feels like it loses its value, and that it just almost seems more routine. Not like you being a loving partner, but that you're just like, all right, it's 2 p.m. I gotta ask how they are. So I don't know. Like I'm not a big fan of that personally. So what the article recommended was to, kind of get off of that whole hourly update thing and kind of just move into, instead of, especially for new relationships that are forming, instead of just doing the how are you and what's up all the time, actually start getting into some personal shit, like really do your research on this person. I don't mean like completely stalk them online. That was already a past episode. I don't necessarily mean that, but there's definitely common interest you could quickly notice on someone's profile that they have that you may share with them as well. And that's something that, yeah, start getting into that, or at least when time starts going by a little bit, you could start getting into certain little personal things. One of my favorite things about getting to know new people, especially on a romantic level, is I really like to get to know like every little detail about them. I'm a very attention to detail individual, I guess you could say. And I love knowing like every little thing. I love knowing that you like to eat peanut butter every day at 4 p.m. Okay, that's me. No, not anymore. But I like to know those. I like to know those little things, and I love when people can feel comfortable enough to get vulnerable with you. Like those are the real conversations. That's actually what does attract me to certain people that and some of these people may not have even seen me in that light, but because they got so vulnerable with me and I really saw a true part of them past the how are you and how have you been, I feel like I actually am getting to know them. And that's like so important to me. It's so crucial. If I had to say I was like, because I identify as bisexual, but I've always believed I was somewhat demisexual, which is building a really strong connection with someone on an emotional level, and that you need that emotional connection in order to have the relationship going, to be aroused, etc. I desperately need an emotional connection with someone, and if I'm not getting to know you past the typical copy and paste messages of how are you and stuff, or messages that you may be sending to a bunch of different people at the same time, I just kind of lose interest personally. So yeah, so another thing the article mentions is I think this is for more in person, if you're in person talking to someone, is really being involved in your surroundings and your environment, really knowing what's around you. For example, this has not happened yet, but oh my God, I would love to meet a partner in a Barnes and Noble, because I love books and I'm a writer, and I just, that atmosphere in general of a bookstore, and I don't mean just Barnes and Noble, but like a bookstore like environment. I love being in that environment, so I put myself in that environment. And if someone is starting a conversation with me where it's related to our environment that they also share that interest in, it's going to get me more intrigued, instead of them coming up and saying, "Hey, sexy." Like, it's just weird. It's a little bit like more off-putting, especially if I have no idea who you are. And I would try not to do that to someone else either, and put them in an uncomfortable position like that. So definitely, study your environment, your surroundings. Like I said, if you're surrounded by books, maybe you could bring up your favorite book, or if someone, I'm always reading the backs of books and like to read what they're about to see if I'm going to buy it. Or let's be real, I have a library card now, so if I'm probably not going to buy it, but I might rent it to save some money. I just think that's a good way. I'm not so much about collecting them anymore per se, because of just how many times I've moved and stuff. Books are heavy. Books are very heavy. It's like probably all my books together at one point were probably heavier than like my bed. Like yeah. But anyway, so yeah, definitely study the environment. If you guys are outside, if you guys are, let's say like you're just walking around the neighborhood and you meet someone who's running or also walking, there's definitely things you could take, especially with being outside. There's things in your environment that you could really soak in and take in, just because nature is beautiful in itself. So there's definitely just different ways to connect in that sense. And yeah, pretty much all else that it really suggested, which I definitely agree with, is sharing real news and actual things going on in your life. I've been guilty of this. Maybe you have too, where if someone asks you how you are and you're just like, "Oh, I'm good," or I'm great, I'm pretty good," but you're really not. I try to be good with that. I'll say I'm hanging in there, I'm okay. Like, I kind of don't. I know half the time I do answer those. Sometimes I get a lot of messages at once, and sometimes I kind of will give a little bit of a generic answer, because just so many messages, it's like it gets tiring. But I also want to try my best not to ignore people, but it's hard the more messages that come in and stuff. So, but when I do respond, I really do want to give an actual response to that, and I would like the same from people, not just like, "Hey, how are you?" And it's like, just like a brick wall pretty much, or like I said, good, but you don't really feel that way. Like, if you feel comfortable enough, share something that's actually going on in your life. Like if you just got honor roll in college or school, or if you just got a promotion at a job, or if you just lost your pet or something, like, if you feel comfortable sharing that type of stuff, do it, because it's more genuine. It makes the conversation more real and, engaging and stuff. That's the type of stuff that personally engages myself. But yeah, so I already ran out of time for that topic. So yeah, what am I saying? Fee, fo, fum. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We will be right back. And we are back. So out of the three topics today, this one's probably going to be more of a serious topic. There's some things that have gone in my life very recently that kind of made me think more about this topic a little bit. And before I get started on the topic, one, I don't really want to mention super like specific things. I'm not like going to start saying names or anything. And two, when it comes to this topic, I think it's like a gray area, and I feel like it's more complex than one would just assume. Whenever we think about toxic relationships, I think a lot of the time we almost feel like we're 100% the victim in the situation. That person is just the devil and all wrong in every single way, and we were correct in every single way. I do not believe that. I think there are mistakes that both people make in this. So let's just get into the whole toxic friendships, to be specific. I think I said toxic relationships, so sorry for that. There was this great quote that I found from John Mark Green. He says, "Toxic people attach themselves like cinder blocks tied to your ankles and then invite you for a swim in their poisoned waters." And I feel like that's a very powerful quote. There's times during, and not just this recent situation, but just with some friendships in general, that I felt were a little bit more toxic than others. I almost felt like I was drowning, in a sense, that it did feel like I was trapped in something I couldn't get out of, and that it seemed like, it just, I don't know, like I would feel like more negative and depressing and hopeless. And sometimes I thought that was just me, but I also had to kind of take a look at the people that were in my life, or that were closest to me during that time, and who was really igniting certain things. And I realized, oh, like maybe it's not just me, like maybe there's like a side influence on top of everything. So I found some certain toxic friendship traits. And actually, before I even go into that, I guess, I'll get a little bit personal, I guess. So like I said, there was a recent situation that unfortunately occurred, where I lost a good friend of mine. We were friends for at least 10 years, I think maybe even 12 years. And I'd be lying if I said it wasn't tough. However, this friendship specifically, there's been a lot of bumps in the road, and there's been a lot of breaks where I feel like normally with a friendship, you guys, like two people, like people are going to argue in general. They're going to maybe fight, but usually like that happens, and maybe like both people take a breather. And like, I feel like in friendships, at least longer friendships, they don't just like kind of cut the friendship off and end it. And I noticed with some of my toxic-ish ones, that was a pattern where the friendship would break over and over and over again, which also kind of reminds me of my first romantic relationship, where, I kid you not, so we dated for 7 months, but the first 4 months, it was just straight through dating. And then the last 3 months, and this is why I say I kid you not, we broke up and got back together 38 to 40 times in 3 months. I feel like that because most of the breakups would be like break up one day, get back together the next. It wasn't like a long period of time. But like that back and forth really isn't healthy in general. And it's not for romantic relationships, it's not for friendships either. And with this, there were a lot of breaks like that. And I think when we would become friends again, I don't think we never really got into why we had stopped being friends previously. It just kind of was like, let's start clean. It's under the table. But then when future fights occurred, then it's like those problems were starting to come back up. And it's like, oh, like those weren't even solved, I guess. Like they were just swept under the rug because we kind of had like a break of not being friends. But then it's just stuff that would come up. A lot of the same issues came up. And to be completely honest, just my view on that topic is that if anyone, and this is with anyone, if I'm, having a disagreement or argument or just some awkward moment with someone and, and we get through it, we communicate or whatever, and you say, and I say that we are moved on from this, we better be moved on. I do not want to hear it again, because I think one of the worst things is when you think you solved an issue with someone and then they bring it back and they throw it into your face. I don't think that's fair, because we had claimed we were moved on from this. If we really weren't, we shouldn't have said that, like we shouldn't have just said that to end it, quote, because it really didn't end. It's coming back up now and it's hurting the friendship. Like I said, though, that specific situation, there's a lot to it, and I don't want to get into super specifics, but some of these things that I read here, some of these traits and stuff, I did kind of notice some of them. And, yeah, like I said, just with the amount of breaks that we had in this friendship, it was getting harder and harder to keep it repaired, and just pretty much ending every year. And I don't know, that just gets really tiring, because it's like an argument at least every month, every other week, and then having like a big blowout where it ends the friendship once a year. I mean, that just is, it's very exhausting. And I think it's tough for me to let go of people for good. I have a really hard time of letting go, but now I'm just getting to the point in life, especially like with this situation, where I'm tired of going through the same shit again and again and again. I'm really tired. I don't like, my patience is so dry that I just don't have any more to give. And the more that I've thought about it, looking back, I did notice there were some toxic things. And like I said towards the beginning of the episode, I'm not even saying that I 100% blame this person, identify them as like the full toxic. I think with the breaks that we had in our friendship, it made me develop some toxic thoughts and actions too. And that's just never good when both people are acting in certain ways that aren't genuine. So one of the things I found is that a toxic friend will always try to put you down. So this one really speaks to me. And like I said, now I'm going to just focus on past friends and stuff in general. And I can definitely think of a couple where they just could not be happy for me. Like, I know I really try to uplift my friends. I want to see my friends succeed. I want them to be the best that they can be. I definitely think of two right off the top of my head that just never congratulated me on not on a damn thing that I did. They just never were happy for me. And then when we would fight, certain feelings of like jealousy came out, and I don't get that. I don't get the whole jealous thing. Like, I don't get why you wouldn't want people that you care about in your life to not be successful. Like, that's an awesome thing that they're being successful. Do you want them to be a complete fucking loser? I don't think so. And if you do, well, that's a little bit toxic. If you want to be the only successful one and you want everyone else to be brought down, that's just, in my opinion, it's not healthy to think that way. I know my high school self, and when I was younger, I definitely was quite a toxic person, I can admit today. And I had really bad jealousy issues. And when I also talk about jealousy, I want to just acknowledge a quick thing too that relates more to romantic relationships. And this is just my personal belief. You might not feel the same way. I don't think it's required to have jealousy in a relationship. That's just my opinion. I think jealousy is very toxic. Coming from someone who is a very jealous individual themselves back in the day, that got jealous off of just the smallest of things that my partner would do or anything like that, it's just not healthy. I don't get why people are like, oh, jealousy is healthy and it helps like keep the relationship alive. I don't think it does. I think it just ends up causing so many more problems in general. Another toxic friendship trait is isolating you from others. So I'm also evaluating myself during this to see if I've portrayed these in the past or if I do now, or just like a little bit of a self-evaluation. There's one friend I think of where I wouldn't say I drive them away from others, because yeah, that's really the toxicity of it. There's just a friend that I have where we both agree, like, when we just hang out one-on-one, it's the best. Like, we don't need to hang out in a group of people. So I wouldn't say like we're driving each other away from our other friends, because we still see other people and hang out with them. We just would prefer not to be in group settings. We could be, but the friendship is so awesome when just the two of us are hanging out. And that's just with that specific friendship. I'm trying to think in the past if I've isolated people from others. I don't think I did. Probably because I don't personally, I hate giving like ultimatums and stuff, whether it's a friendship or romantic, especially if it's a romantic relationship. Like I hate getting ultimatums, so I wouldn't want to give one, you know. I know people are different on that type of stuff, but if my romantic partner is gonna say, hey, you need to stop talking to that guy, or you need to drop your best friend, or whatever, or I go, like, sorry, you're leaving. Because no one's gonna tell me like what to, if I'm not giving you rules in life. That's how I think I see it, is we already have so many laws and rules in society. I don't need to be given like this whole manual of like, you can't do this, you can't act this way, you can't pretty much like be yourself. In general, I'm a friendly person who, when I'm with someone, I don't flirt. If I'm single, I flirt a little bit. I get a little flirty. If I'm in a relationship, I don't. Like, you're the only person I see. You have nothing to worry about. So that whole like jealousy and the isolating thing is just a super turn off for me. And I don't know if you guys are the same way in that, but I am. Humiliating you publicly. I'm trying to think. I don't know if I've had. I guess I could think of one old friend that I had that they felt like they had to show off all the time and stuff. And they would kind of like put me down in the process, which kind of goes back to the first one, I guess. But they, especially, it's like related to, like working out and stuff. 'Cause, you know, us guys, like we got to like show off our brawn and stuff. And they would like kind of try to make it a point that they were stronger than me physically. Which it's like, that's whatever, even though I know mentally, like, had it in the bag. But, no, like, why does that even matter in general? Like, in general, we should just be supporting one another. I don't get, like, why I had to turn into, like, weird competitions like that. But, yeah, they would do it in a way that they would try to, like, embarrass me. They'd be like, oh, yeah, you can't lift that, huh? Like, I could lift that. Like, you know, that type of stuff. And that's just obviously not the healthiest to do. You shouldn't get like a sense of joy off of your friends being embarrassed about something. Not helpful when needed. So, and by the way, I never really did the humiliating stuff. This next one, if we're gonna kind of go back to my most recent situation, technically I'm not being helpful when I'm needed. I will admit, because I was part of something really important for this friend and I'm not doing it now. It's not necessarily 100% by choice, but it's not happening. And, you know, I'm not there. However, I won't allow disrespect and to be disregarded as much as I was. I felt like I was brought down to the lowest of the low. Like, I was viewed as the dirtiest piece of garbage. And I will never, after some of my past relationships in my life, whether they were friendships or romantic, I will never fucking allow someone to disrespect me ever again and stay in my life. It's just not happening. Like there needs to be that mutual respect. Because at the end of the day, you want, like, we're going to annoy each other, we're going to need to vent and stuff. Like, I get that. And I feel like that's something that I think is normal. Like, we're not gonna like love our friends every single minute of the day, but there's certain, like, if you really don't like certain characteristics of someone, like, that's a problem. Like, then it's like, why are you friends at that point? And I think that was kind of happening on both our sides, where there was things about the other one that we just really didn't like. That was who they actually were. So yeah. So that ends up turning more into a toxic route. I'm running out of time, but I'm going over because there's another point or two on here. Harsh competition. So with harsh competition, I kind of laugh to myself because I think about one friend where we're very competitive with one another. Well, I guess technically two I could think of, but there's one that I thought of right off the bat where we're just very competitive in video games and stuff, where, yeah, like, if we're playing, let's say, Mario Party or Mario Kart, we might hit the other one, we might screw them over in that game. I would never screw any of my friends over in life. And I don't feel like I don't feel like I need to compete with my friends. We're all, like, even if we're doing similar things or our own things, I don't think life is like a game in that sense. And all my close friends, they're all in relationships, and I'm currently not. I don't feel like I need to compete by, like, finding some person off the street and dating them and getting married and having kids and being like, my life's the best, look at me and stuff. Like, I just don't have that urge to have to do that. But I think some people do that. They, like, try to almost compete their lives and stuff. The only other example I can think of in my life related, this kind of relates to a job of mine, a company that I used to work for. I won't say the name because it's just not worth it, but where there was an individual, myself, I think of especially, you could just tell we were very competitive with one another. In general, I am a competitive person, but I'm not going to, like, sabotage to get ahead or stuff like that. Like, I just do the best that I can. But with this individual in that company, it was starting to get, like, on a dirtier sense, like, some real shit talking and stuff. And it's like, it doesn't need to be that serious. Like, I don't need to bring someone else down to raise myself up. We should be rising up together. And now rise up. Think of that song. The last one is emotionally blackmail. So that, I find that really interesting. I'm trying to think. In the past, I feel like that I feel like I've seen myself do that a little bit and just be, and I can admit, like, 100, I was somewhat of a manipulative individual when I was younger. And I don't even want to, like, really give excuses to that, because I could be like, I was in a dark place and this and that, but, like, I still didn't have to act like a shit human being. And I did in ways. And also, just being young, it's almost, like, even more common, more likely that we're going to, like, make a bunch of mistakes. And that's what I was doing. And all those mistakes adding up together were really making me just not a great person, not a person that I would look up to, not the person that I want to be. So I really started to do a 180 on that, and I'm in a whole different place in my life now, emotionally and everything, and it's great. But yeah, I'm trying to think if friends have put me, like I said, I'm pretty positive back then I would do that to people, which is awful. And like I said, no excuses for it. It's fucked up. Trying to think if people emotionally blackmailed me. I mean, yeah, I think a little bit. I just remembered one friend that I felt comfortable with them, and I would tell, they were like one of my old, like, vent friends, where I would vent about certain things. I didn't necessarily mean it, but I just needed to get shit out. And I'm not gonna like just post social media statuses about it all. Like, just I feel like that's kind of gotten common, but I'm not that type of person. I try to keep a journal now, if anything, just to like get those thoughts out. You have to like get them out, work them out, whatever you got to do. But I did have one friend where I did confide in them in just a couple things. Like I said, I was venting. It wasn't necessarily like I meant it, just annoyed in the moment with a different friend. And when that friend and I confided in that when we were having an argument, they were starting to kind of like pull a Jeffree Star in a way. And no, not like complete shade to him or anything like that, but he always talks about how he like has receipts on people and like has all this like dirt or whatever. Well, that friend was like, well, I'm gonna tell your other friends like what you said about them and shit like that. And it's like, dude, like, you're a piece of shit. Like, you're a piece of shit human being in general. Like, I was venting in the moment for like 2 minutes, and you're gonna try to pass that on like it was how I really felt about someone, when I was just annoyed in a situation, just had to process. I feel like venting is a process of feelings in a way, and it's not like I haven't had a therapist in years. Otherwise, I would just do it there, so yeah, just definitely be careful with who you confide in, because they could just try to spin it around, and it's kind of fucked up. It's kind of toxic. But yeah, I went a little bit over, but it's my show. I guess I don't care that I went a little over. I just had to finish that. But yeah, so we are going to take another quick commercial break. So we will be right back. And we are back. So the last topic today that I'm going to discuss is a little bit more on the positive side to end things, and that is developing healthy relationships. So there's some certain traits and things that I kind of brainstormed and summarized, along with very slight online research on what makes a healthy relationship. But first, there was another good quote. I'm a quote guy. I love quotes. I know a lot of people love quotes, or just they get addicting, honestly, a little bit. That could be a whole nother topic, I just realized. But I found another good quote. It didn't say who it was by, but it said, it said, a good relationship is when someone accepts your past, supports your present, and encourages your future. So yeah, I mean, that's a great quote right there. And yeah, relationships, good relationships specifically, are so important to have in your life. They would help keep you level-headed in life. Life can get so stressful. And one thing I always say too, out of any type of relationship in your life, friendships, I believe, should be one of the easiest types of friendships you have. And romantic relationships, you are going to have your ups and downs. They're not the easiest things in the world, but they should provide a lot of love. And your family relationships should provide a lot of support and love as well. So a healthy and good relationship is super important. And what's great about developing a healthy relationship is pretty much anyone can do it. It's not like doing like being healthy, doing a diet and stuff, and not being able to eat certain foods that maybe you love to eat and stuff. Like, developing healthy relationships and healthy and positive traits and stuff, it's not like this, it shouldn't be this uphill battle. It should be something a little bit more effortless that just requires some learning and some emotional intelligence overall. So one thing is being supportive of one another. I mean, that's something I think that sometimes we forget, getting in the midst of everything, getting busy. And this is on a friendship and a romantic relationship level, where, yeah, we might forget to support one another when we're kind of like in the weeds, we're really busy at work, or just a lot of stuff is going on in our lives where we may feel overwhelmed. We can forget to reach out to a friend and say, oh, like, how are you doing with things? I just think about the whole "how are you" question, but contradiction. No, but reaching out to your friends or your partners is definitely something that is important to do, and making sure that you guys are trying your best to support one another. We all come from different financial backgrounds, so you may not have as much financially as you do than the next person or the other person in your life that you have this relationship with, but there's still a lot you can still support them, and you can still offer a lot of great things. Like, this isn't just about supporting someone financially or like getting them the best gifts or anything. It's not all about that. There's a lot more to that. And that also makes me think of The Five Love Languages as well by Gary Chapman, where there's just different love languages between two individuals. I feel like friendships can kind of be the same way, where it's all about the individual and we all want different things. So respecting each other. So that's something I giggle a little bit, because that's something I just said in the last topic, that if I do not get respect, like, it's just done. I need to have respect. I'm going to give you respect, so I expect the same in return. I've had quite a few issues with this in work environments where just certain bosses, they felt like since they were the top boss, they could just like completely disrespect me and others. But that's not how I roll. I feel like regardless of what position you are, you really should still provide respect. I'm not saying have employees or anything walk all over you, but there's still a level of respect, and to just remember that we're all human beings and that we should be all viewed as equal in a human being sense, and that you're not just like king and everyone's a peasant, you know? So that's the first thing I thought about, like respecting each other. And besides just like certain things in some of my personal past relationships too, where if there's no respect, it's going to be really hard to make it last, unfortunately. Communication, super big one. With me, I'm a huge communicator. I want to say with certain situations, like the whole toxic friendship thing and everything, with certain individuals where it's so draining, and I feel like I feel like I've communicated over and over and over again. I feel like there comes a time where there's just nothing else to communicate at that point. Like, I know that could be viewed as, oh, well, like, you're giving up on this because you don't want to communicate. There's just nothing else left to say at that point. Like, everything's been said over time, and it's like and nothing's changing, nothing's getting better. So it's at that point, like, that just comes to a point where you might have to walk away. But obviously, like, if you want to keep the friendship or relationship alive, you definitely need to have a strong sense of communication. Like I said, I'm not going to put like any partners on blast or anything like that, but I definitely think of one romantic partner, one ex that I have, where communication was definitely our biggest struggle. But I can elaborate on that. I know back in the day, me being such a communicator, like an over communicator maybe to a sense, I used to blame that person who didn't communicate nearly as much. I would blame them for the lack of our communication. But it kind of goes both ways, in a sense of, yeah, there is the more common denominator of not communicating is like not saying things. But you could also be like, kind of how I was, you could also be the person who is over communicating, and they are just talking to the point where the other person can't even get anything in or process their own thoughts, where they just keep pushing it. And now I can definitely relate more now, because of just recent events that have occurred in my life, where I definitely feel the shoe on the other foot pretty much. And now I understand more about that. Oh, like, that's possible too, that that communication is a two-way street, where you guys have to come together and meet each other halfway on, I think about, like I said, I'm talking about partners right now, how we usually do communicate at least a little bit differently, or a lot differently, than our partner. So there's just this way we have to kind of come together, you and the partner, and come up with a way where you guys can communicate but still like do it in your styles, and kind of compromise on like almost like a mix of your style and a mix of their style, put it a little bit together. So for example, with me, how I was so big at communicating and they were more quiet, and not like speaking anything. There, I think a good compromise would have been, I could have given them more space so that they could have processed things more. They could have opened up a little bit more on how they felt about certain things. So I think that would have been like a good compromise for both of us. And just in general, like I said, that's just an example of effective communicating. So staying honest, that's all I do on this podcast and just in life. I've been told, especially, I mean, in the past, it was kind of brutal, but in general in life, I'm always told that I can be like almost brutally honest in a way, which I do try to work on that, but I do like to be candid because I think because I would want the same in return. I don't want someone just feeding me a bunch of lies at the end of the day, so I wouldn't offer that to someone else either. I would want to tell them how I really feel, because the longer that you don't tell someone how you really feel, it can start feeling like phony and fake a little bit. So if you really do feel like you need to communicate those things, like that's something you just have to do, whether it's tough or not. It's, you know, just staying honest, keeping the relationship authentic. Um, you know, even if you make some sort of mistake, it's just not good to lie about it, because then that mistake is starting to become more mistakes and it just gets worse and worse and worse. Where, so for example, let's just go with an obvious example of you cheating on someone, let's say. And if you just tell that person you cheated, I believe it's way better to just do that and admit that mistake than to not only cheat on the person, but then lie about it for years, maybe even cheat multiple times, and it turn into like this dragon of infidelity and lies. Like that, it's going to be way worse, the response. Where, of course, if you tell your partner you cheated on them, it's awful, like it's a horrible conversation to have, but it can get so much worse to where the relationship is really in shambles. So feeling positive, I mean, that's kind of like a more that's kind of a more obvious one. And I definitely have some thoughts on like positivity and like toxic positivity and things, but definitely trying to be optimistic is really good, because when someone's pessimistic all the time, I can think of, I thought of someone immediately where this person in my life, they were just always pessimistic about everything in life, and you just, it's hard to be around. It's depressing. It's something that just, it's like, why would I want to be around that unless I was a pessimistic person myself? So and you may be a pessimistic person yourself and not even realize it either, and like realize that you're just always like bitching and complaining about every single little thing in life, and it does turn people off, and it does cause a relationship not to really flourish. Whereas if you're uplifting and you're bringing each other up and you're sharing positive affirmations with one another, like I feel like that's more water that you're giving to the plant, that you're giving to the soil, compared to just growing a bunch of weeds. So giving space to each other, this is huge for me. So I didn't mean to say huge like that, but big, 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 big thing with me. Like I said, I was an only child, so I was used to being on my own. If I will not die if I'm left alone in a situation. Like, don't worry. Like, if something just happened and you're like, oh my God, I should probably check on him, I'm fine. Like, trust me. Like, I'll live. Like, we can talk about it another time or later or whatever. But like, trust me. Like, I definitely need my space. It actually, I've only lived with one friend so far, because it makes me nervous because of just the amount of space that, you know, because with friendships, I feel like they're an outsource to kind of get away from your home life. And just a personal thing about myself, I do get slightly annoyed the more that I see the same person over and over and over again. I like to actually miss people a little bit, or at least be like, okay, like a few days went by and we haven't said anything or seen each other in like a week or a month or whatever. So like it'd be nice to catch up, to see them, whatever, compared to seeing them every day and every day for like 8 hours plus every day. Like that's too much. It's definitely too much. And in a living situation with a friend, that's exactly what happened. It's 24/7 almost that you're in that environment with them. So I would get nervous that not only that I'd get into like more arguments with them from like frustration or anything, but then at the same time, with friends, like I'm used to like going out with friends and going somewhere, and because I'm not seeing them all the time. But if you're seeing your friend all the time at the house, some people, they do get really close to the friend they live with and they do everything together, and that's like great. I'm a little envious of that because that's just not me. If I'm living with a friend that I see all the time, I'm probably not really going to make like as many plans with you because I already go home to you and I already see you. So I'm gonna go see my other friends that I never get to see now because now like we see each other all the time, and I gotta catch up with them and stuff, or I need a break just for a second, like regardless of who I live with, if it's a friend or a romantic partner. We'll see how it goes in the future. Well, romantic partners, it is a little bit different with that. Like you just kind of almost have to like accept that like they're your partner and you are gonna see them. But yeah, with friendships I did get worried because there's definitely more a higher probability that there's going to be like clashing and all this. And when you have friends that you like hang out with or whatever and you go home alone, it's so different than being like living with the friend, because then you're really seeing who they are in their home environment too. Whereas like when you hang out with people, you're like this fun person usually half of the time, but then like they get to see the boring version of you too, and it's just, yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, I'm really big with the whole space thing in general, but everyone's different too. That's a very individual thing with that. Spending quality time, which is the opposite of giving space, it's still important to offer some quality time. And like I said earlier, we get really busy with our adult lives. If you are an adult watching this, because some younger people might be listening or watching, but it's still important to make time for those people that mean something to you, whether it is good friendships, your romantic relationships, I said that plural, but some people it's plural, your family members and stuff. It's important to make sure you spend that quality time, because the longer that you don't, that relationship, regardless of what it is, it can start to fizzle a little bit. For me personally, I don't see too many different people, because just with some people, and this kind of goes back to the toxic friendship, but just toxic any interpersonal relationship, regardless if they're romantic or friendship or family or whatever. There's just people I'm realizing now as I get older that I don't want to be around. And I don't mean that to be like offensive or anything, but I just notice the different paths that we're going. And it's not like you're on a necessarily like negative path or I'm on a negative path. We're just going in different directions. But with other people that I do want the space from and that I don't want to spend quality time with, it is related to, I do sense some toxic traits with those people, so I don't want to be around those people, honestly, because it's certain behaviors and things they do, and they're gonna just keep doing them. They're not learning from those mistakes that they're making, and I just, yeah, like you start to lose patience for that. I don't want to be bogged down by like constant unnecessary drama, and just like, I get it, things are gonna happen in life and like negativity and drama and stuff, but like all the time it's very draining, and it feels very soul sucking, and it's really important to choose the people who stay close to you in your life, who are in your circle. And the last thing I came up with was give compliments. So I think of a romantic relationship, we tend to forget that sometimes, of like actually, I feel like the longer a relationship is, you know how they always say there's the honeymoon phase. Well, then there's also like just us in general getting comfortable with our partner. And I've experienced this too. I'm also a little bit of a hopeless romantic, so I always like to plan. I've always planned like little cute things and stuff, and I'm a writer too, so I like to, like write about people I care about and stuff like that. Like I like to get a little creative and like to show my partner that I appreciate them. But when we're in certain situations, especially stressful situations like now or with our jobs and whatever, we like the quality time. We forget the compliments too. It might be something like with the five love languages. One of Gary Chapman's five love languages is words of affirmation. And for some people, words of affirmation are really important. I want to say for me, that is important to me. It used to be more important, not as much now. I've learned through like the tests and everything. But yeah, definitely do not forget to compliment your partner. Don't be afraid to compliment your friends, which I know with two guys, it's like, oh, it's awkward. Like, that's my bro. But like, you still can say nice things. You don't have to say, yo, man, you're hot. Like, it doesn't have to, like, like, don't make it weird if that's going to make it weird. But you still can say, like, you're doing a great job in life. Like, congrats on that promotion. Like, there's ways you can still compliment people regardless of like orientation or anything like that. Like, like don't make it fucking weird, So yeah, I want to say that's it for today's episode. I went over time, I think, again, but whatever. I want to thank today's sponsor for sponsoring this video and pretty much all my videos so far. Thank you so much for that. I want to thank Sapphire for providing the intro and outro music for season's 2 episodes. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening and for watching and for supporting. I do want to remind you guys about the Patreon that I have. I'm going to just keep it 100% honest. I don't currently have any Patreons. So if there's any suggestions for, actually, let me just rewind a second. Some of you might not even know what Patreon is. So let me explain that quick. Patreon is a service. I don't want to say it's like OnlyFans because people are going to be like, okay, that's weird. But it is similar in certain ways, just in a whole different way. So for content creators, Patreon will, you pay monthly an amount, and then us, the creators, will provide you with like extra content or like certain like benefits and bonuses. So it's a little bit similar because they both have the whole like monthly thing, and they do offer a service or whatever, but it's a lot more PG. So there's not gonna be like pictures of me or anything like that. So sorry for those that I disappoint, but I definitely have other things I can offer. If you have any suggestions on things you guys would want, I'm more than happy to hear about it, and we could figure something out that way. But I would definitely truly appreciate the support that way to just keep things going. The equipment cost a lot. I wanted to kind of up everything and add this video thing, so it would really help, not even just for like equipment or anything, but just because this is kind of like my living now. So it would really help to just help me, keep working and going with this whole venture and stuff. So yeah, anyone that does that, thank you so much. And I promise to give you some great content with that. So yeah, that's it for today. I hope all of you have a super special, awesome day, and bye.